Hanging with Higgins, where author and former prosecutor John J. Higgins interviews his intriguing guests about their lives, knowledge, experiences, and projects. Explore, learn, and be entertained. Come, join us now. Good evening, and welcome to Hanging with Higgins. I'm your host, John J. Higgins. Tonight, I have an intriguing woman and entrepreneur, Mary Skerik, who has many skills as a professional dancer, choreographer, teacher, fitness expert, founder and owner of Skydance Studios in Boca Raton, Florida. She's also founded and owned the Dance Academy in Deerfield Beach, as well as My Dance Academy and Fitness Masters spanning the East and West Coast. She is also the president and CEO of the Perfect Charity Incorporated, located as well in Boca Raton, that aids physically and mentally afflicted young people with their challenges through movement, dance, and nutrition. Her websites are at www.perfectstormcharities.org, all one word, and www.skydancesstudios.com. Welcome, Mary. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you, John.
It's wonderful to speak with you again.
I know. It's wonderful to speak to you, too.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
That's a long story, but I can start with, I'm here in Boca Raton. I'm originally from South Florida, born and raised in Fort Lauderdale. I'm in the Deerfield Beach area for years and years with my studio. I was there 18 years, actually.
Wow.
Started as a student, went into choreographer, dance teacher, went from there to New York City, and went to college there for the School of Performing Arts, AMDA. Enjoyed my time, came back, bought the studio. For years and years, had a great time owning a professional company, toured and traveled all over the world. It was so much fun. I was able to be a performer, a mother, a friend, everything I wanted to be, and moved to Southern California to start the medical field. Met an amazing woman there who decided that I was going to teach her children. And decided that I was going to teach her children and open another dance studio. And in my saying, no way, I'm not doing that, 2 weeks later, I was open. And I ended up opening up with, I knew one person in Southern California, and I opened a studio with 57 students my day number one. And year number one, I was about 150. Went from 7,000 square feet to 27,000 square feet in 2 years. And the majority of that was where I began the special needs program. And I just had some families that had some afflicted children. And instead of turning them away, I ended up opening classes for them and fell in love, not only with the children, but with the families. And I began a program that would actually help aid and benefit the neurological process. So I worked with some different classes and exercises that would do that. Worked with some other doctors that would aid to that, and found that I loved the program so much. And I went from being a ballet, jazz, tap, Latin, ballroom instructor of all these different kinds, different genres, and progressing towards teaching adults and children with special needs, and found that that's where my passion started to grow.
Wow. Well, I think you certainly developed the New York speed of talking. So maybe we go through some of this a little bit more slowly.
Okay, no problem.
You have my head spinning here. So why don't we start with, how did you get interested in dance?
I grew up with a family of performers. We were all dancers and singers. It didn't take us a minute at every event that we were dancing and singing with each other. My mother was a dancer. She was very heavily into the Latin and ballroom field. We went out dancing all the time. So, in the middle of the night, she would, of course, wake us up, my sister and I, and move everything from the middle of the dance floor and say, it's time for me to teach you a new step. So when I went into high school, I met a woman. I was doing
How old were you when your mother was doing that with you and your sister?
Oh, 7, 8, 9, 10. Started about 6 or 7 years old. Put our dresses on and our heels. That was back in the day. And I say back in the day when we were doing disco, the hustle. That was the big thing. And the mambo. Mambo too. And so she had some amazing professionals, Nina Della Pina. She worked with some amazing people. And while working with them, my sister and I were able to dance with them as well. So we grew up with it basically in our house as family outside of classes. And when I got to high school, I decided to take a different route with it, and I went more technical and took classes myself. And the studio that I started taking classes with, I ended up becoming not only the choreographer instructor, but then I bought the studio, so I became owner. And that's kind of where it started. I mean, it started with my family.
So now when you were in school, was it part of what you did as your curriculum, or was this all extracurricular?
It was, at that time, it was all extracurriculum. Curriculum then was when we actually had physical education classes. But I did do classes in drama. I mean, I took the theater, the music, because I actually started it with music and vocalization. I went to school for voice.
Okay.
Back in the day, I did voice in Italian opera. Who would know? I ended up with this raspy voice now because I teach so much that wasn't an option later in life. But yeah, it was music and dance. We had to be what you called a triple threat. So acting, singing, and dancing, it was very important that you knew all aspects, all areas to become anywhere or to do anything. That was important.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I remember back in my days at gym, it was playing the dodgeball or running around the track. So, I think it's much more sophisticated today.
Oh.
So now when you went to college, you went to this school in New York, right? The School for Dance.
Right. I went to American Musical and Dramatic Academy.
Now that was a college level curriculum?
Yes. Oh, yes. My classes back then, I know it adds all the curriculum with math and science, but back then it was all music and dance. So we had 8-hour days of straight music, dance, and arts and theater classes.
Okay. I mean, the reason I asked that, because I've talked to a number of people, and I know up here we have a couple of, like, the Fame kind of high schools.
Right.
So that's why I didn't know whether there was a differentiation or whatever.
No, Fame kind of college.
I see. So now that was also tied with some Broadway stuff, from what I've gathered from your...
Did, of course, I was involved in some Broadway, off-Broadway shows, lots of auditions, but the shows that I was able to do, I just had a lot of fun, but I just found that world was nice on the outside, and I wanted to do something more. Of course, I already knew that I was a dance teacher and a music teacher, but most importantly, that my choreography was what I wanted to do. So when I came back and had the studio, I had that waiting for me, of course. And I wanted to choreograph, and I choreographed for some amazing people and students and adults and shows, television. Just Super Bowl halftime was fun. Commercials.
We see, you've done all these things, but I think most people would be very interested in those kinds of things that you did. So when you did like television, how did you get involved with that?
We did a lot of MTV videos, and we did some background dancing for movies. It was always here in Miami. It's very big, so you can go and do this on a weekly basis. Okay.
So it was like a call for dancers or that kind of thing, or were you tied with an agent and all of those more formal, methods?
Right, both. I was just so busy that I didn't miss a call. So I did that, and I was working with the professional dance company. So a lot of it was, we were hired for shows. I mean, we toured, we traveled all over the place. I did a Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. I did Discovery, Sea Escape, you name it. We danced on the cruise lines. We were sent to Canada, the Bahamas all the time. We did, Latin shows from Miami. There was just Vegas shows. So we toured and traveled and did some pretty amazing shows. I had so much fun with it. I was just blessed.
Right. Now, when you were on the cruise lines, and I've read so much about how they work their staffs pretty much to the bone.
Right.
Was that true? Did you have time to enjoy while you were, on these cruises, or was it all just work?
I was one of the fortunate dancers, and at the time I had a family and children, so I didn't go on the cruise lines for 6 months. What I did was the inaugural cruises. So, I had a charmed life at that point. I would say I went for 18 days. I never had to live down with, in the bottom. I stayed up where we had regular rooms, and we stayed at the captain's table every night. And I think to me, I felt like it was royalty. I had such a fantastic time dancing. We were dressed up. So for me, it was pleasure and work at the same time.
Right. So that sounds like a much more enjoyable experience than the stuff I've read about with a lot of them.
Yes.
So that's really why I was asking. And then when you would go on tour, I guess, in the country with these troops?
Oh, yeah, in and out of the country. Absolutely.
Okay. And what was that like? Because I filmed some rock stars in the '80s, and
Yeah.
even though they were, it was like Phil Collins and Mike Rutherford and
Right.
then Frank Zappa. I mean, those poor guys when they were on tour, they may be on tour for 18 months, but
Yeah.
it was like 6 shows a week, and it was kind of grueling. I can't imagine most people being able to tolerate that.
Well, we did have a drill sergeant for a choreographer, so some of the shows were grueling because you spent 8-9 hours during the day rehearsing, and then the next thing
Oh.
you were getting ready for your show, and so you had all this preparation, 2 weeks of preparation, and then all day long while they were yelling and screaming at you to change everything, and then you had a 20-minute show and it's over.
Oh.
I would
And
never change it. I actually thrived on something like that. When everything got changed at a moment's notice, and we just had to snap our fingers and say, done, it's over, and learn it in 20,
Right.
a new show, or because we had temperamental choreographers, and they'd say, no, I did it this way, and we couldn't say a word. We just had to switch it over with a smile on our face, and, then we had some that were just amazing. I mean, we danced in our studio, we had Gregory Hines, Xavier Glover, and they danced with us. They were amazing.
Wow.
So we just had some really wonderful stars that came in and said, you're not here for showtime. We're here for fun. This is fun in our lives. And that's what we got to do. We got to enjoy what we were doing.
Right. Well, you must be incredible with motor memory then.
Yeah.
Because I know for myself, having taken some, martial arts courses, sometimes it took me a long time to get the motor memory down.
Yeah. You know what? It's secondary to me now. Everything I do, and sometimes I'm doing 10 things at a time. I don't notice it. It's just, I'm used to it.
Right. So now, you mentioned Gregory Hines
Sure.
and Glover. Have you worked with other famous people?
Oh, I'm sure. You know what? So many. I'm not one of those name throwers. I remember them because they came periodically into our studio and taught with us. And I can tell you that Gregory Hines was one of the nicest, kindest, down-to-earth people, just super, super sweet. I mean, I danced on stage with Michael Jackson. I remember that in the Super Bowl show, and they picked like 8 of us. And I remember him being the sweetest soul. I mean, he didn't tell us to do something. He would just turn around and ask, would you mind if we took that over one more time, and did a little bit like this? And I mean, we were in awe thinking, did he just ask us if we'd mind?
Right.
Of course he was going to do that. But he was just like the kindest souls.
Well, that's been my experience with, the more famous people, is that generally they are very kind and understanding. And I don't think they last long when they're not like that, but,
Right.
Because I think that comes back to bite you. It doesn't really help you.
Right. Unfortunately, we do have the other type, and that's why I probably don't mention or remember their names.
Right. Nor do you want to.
No, it's not worth talking about. I want to talk about the ones that, I do appreciate every type of stuff. It doesn't matter. They got somewhere for whatever reason they got there, and they worked their tails off, I can say, especially in this field. And if they're there for a reason. If they have an attitude, okay, that's I just deal. But the ones that didn't, the ones that just were, really down to earth but had the prestige that you wouldn't, they were amazing. And I remember being with them every second.
Right. Well, that's just extremely interesting. Now you also have gotten more into the fitness kind of end than just the choreography, right? With all your studios and that.
Right.
So could you explain how you got into I mean, it seems to me like it's a good match, but maybe you can explain how that all came about.
I know there's so many, right? It all does tie together, but what happened was I was very much into fitness my entire life. I started out as a fitness instructor and personal trainer when I was like 14, 15 years old. And because I was in the dance studio, what I was doing was doing choreography for the bodybuilders. I was doing their routines. I actually did my first big routine for Mr. Florida, and I could say that was back in the late 80s. And that year he won, and I mean, no one knew my name, and I could care less. It was just so exciting to work with them. And when I was in college, the way I got through a lot of this was to work and teach these classes. So I taught fitness classes, and I was heavily into running and every aspect of the body. I knew that dancing wasn't just about the dancing part. I wanted to know about breathing. I wanted to know the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments. I knew everything that was going on with my body and why at every moment. And then I wanted to help others. So when you're doing choreography, it wasn't just about the dance step. it was the movement behind the dance step. How did they get there? What propelled them to move that way? Well, muscles, tendons, ligaments, breathing, flexibility, all these different things. And that came in when I learned the physical aspect of it. So the personal training and the fitness classes and all of that kind of tied in together with the dance for me, because I was very technical when it came to what I was doing for their bodies alone. And, if I'm going to teach them how to extend something, I need to say what muscles, what tendons, what was working, how they were working. Were they working on both ends? Was it the center? How would they, how could they get hurt? How could they avoid injury? And I did that for all of my dancers or performers. And that's kind of tied in to how I went towards the medical aspect of it, because, when you're thinking dance and fitness, and then you want to think about nutrition, how am I going to eat to be at my optimal level all the time and give me the most energy? Because, if I'm running full force all the time, of course, sleep is important, but I'm not one of those big sleepers. So my nutrition was really important as well. And I took that a little further. And then when I started working with special needs, I took it a step further and went towards the medical end of it. And then we kind of tied into nutrition, food plans, IV nutrition as opposed to taking vitamins, because we want to know how it's going to work for us the best. And then with special needs, it tied together.
Well, I'm just thinking, how much that whole field must have changed in the last, 30 years. I'm sure they were nowhere near where they are today.
No, there's nowhere near. I mean, you're looking at a simple, it was always for certain things, a pill for the ill and a potion for the motion. And now it's so detailed that you can take it down to the very fine detail of what you're doing with food. Look at your foods and see how you're going to go optimal. Look at your nutrition base and see what you're depleted of. Look at your vitamins and just notice that what your body's getting, what it's not getting. And it all starts from the food source. And then you take that into the physical aspect and you say, all I need to do is wake up and breathe properly, walk down the street a little bit. And then you take it past that and you look at your major athletes. I mean, I look at some really major athletes, and why are they having heart attacks?
Right.
Why athletes having what's happening to them? What's the chemistry behind that? So, I mean,
right.
You can push it to a level as well. So you want to it's hard to keep things, especially when you're intense and in moderation. But if you have all these things encompassing, it's easy to be more moderate when you don't look at one thing as a whole. I'm just a runner, or I'm just a this, and you look and say, I'm going to think about my day and all these types of things that I want to do for myself, and you can kind of moderate them.
Right.
Pick the ones you want to be intense with, like when you're dancing, be intense there.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Right.
Well, I'm just thinking in terms of food. I mean, when I was learning, science and biology and all of those things, right. I mean, it was protein. Right. And now they have all the amino acids that are broken down with these BCAA chains, or, all of it to a much greater degree,
right.
Of refinement.
Right.
And do you think that's helped in many ways, or it hasn't made much of a difference?
Oh my goodness. I think with the field today, they're becoming more and more knowledgeable. That's why they're moving into the field of functional medicine as opposed to straight medicine. You find the doctors that are saying, listen, I've given this pill 1 million times over, and the pill factory has said, take this to make you feel better, and it's masking the problem, so that not only the doctor and the patient want to know, what is the problem? How am I going to fix this without taking this pain medication all day long just to kind of mask it? So they're looking at nutrition, and they're looking at supplementation, and they're saying, if I just do this one thing, let's say I remove Coca-Cola from my diet, just that one thing, I'm going to change my life. And they started saying that. I've got one of the doctors that I work with, and I think it's the best saying I've ever heard. And he would point to his mouth and he'd say, I can put bread in any hole in my body. And he'd point to his mouth and say, just not this one. So certain things that you can eliminate and you can add to help you. And it doesn't mean you have to make a full turnaround and do what's not reasonable for most. The basics, just go to the basics and find what's healthy for you, for your body, not in general. But that's changed a lot, because now we're finding that we've got these special needs adults and children. And why? Years and years ago, we didn't have this overflow of special needs. We didn't have that at all. So what's changed to make that happen? Environmental changes, food, right? And that's what's happening.
Right.
So now we've got to break it down and say, why are we getting sick? And so if we just start there, It would help a lot of people if we just brought the awareness to how they eat, what they're eating, and what environmental things are they doing. We're putting cell phones in our pocket. Well, if you usually find a cancer, you'll find that that's where it's going to start. And all of these things that we have going on with technology, you just have to be very careful to bring it into your house or to turn it off when you're sleeping. Don't put it next to your head. There are certain things that are happening with millions of people around the world because of that. So if we're building awareness, I think because people getting sick now, all of a sudden we're waking up and saying, what's going on? How does this not happen? Or how do I correct and fix that? And these are the things that we're searching to do. And so it takes, different organizations that are coming out and saying, this is what I want to help with. This is what I want to help with. And this is one of them, just starting with the basics, looking at your basic exercise, your classes, and then taking the nutritional plans and your IV nutrition and certain things that will help in saying, let's avoid it with the new moms and then try to help those out there that are finding themselves ill.
Right. Well, I know that I saw a special not more than a couple of weeks ago about all the fructose and corn syrup in almost everything that you buy.
Right.
That just seems, absurd when you start thinking about it. It's just taken over basically everything in our food supply somehow. And then we wonder why everybody's getting obese because you're putting sugars into everything.
Yeah, and I know it's difficult. A lot of people say, well, I just can't afford to eat that way. I can't afford to eat healthy. Is that ridiculous? Well, we call Whole Foods whole paycheck. So
right.
if you're wondering why, can you go to the store now? I think the stores are starting to you'll find on the aisles. Now they have more than one aisle that are doing gluten-free. Right. Now they have more than one aisle in the fruits and vegetables section where you can get healthy fruits and vegetables. I think they're opening more grocery stores that are going to aid to that for us as opposed to putting those types of foods there. Not that they're going to go away because believe me, I think we've gotten used to fast food, junk food. Personally, I've never liked it, but it's people will find, listen, I run on $30 a week. How am I going to go in and eat like that? Well, there are ways that you can do that now. And if you can find simple plans and they can learn how to eat more simply, they're not going to they're not going to aid to what you're talking about, the fructose and the sugars, and it's not necessary. But I think it's quick food that people need because they just don't have time anymore.
Well, one of my concerns has always been with the organic kind of products was that I've never felt solid that these things are really organic because having worked on farms as a kid, if you didn't spray or do something with the insecticides, most of those crops were really just destroyed by inchworms or beetles or whatever. So do you have any sense of that? Yeah. I mean, you're in Florida. They grow a lot of produce down there.
I know they do. And, there are certain organizations that you can get in touch with if you're really health conscious and you want to eat that way, that's exactly what they look into. Their organic farms are different than you can actually go into the farm, look at the foods and look at them growing them. If you're really interested in that, I know that's an entire world for people to do that.
Uh-huh.
But if you're looking and you're seeking for that, it's not as hard as you would believe.
Okay. No, I just always felt that it was like some kind of scam going on, but that's been my personal, my personal take on it because, like I said, I saw, we threw away so many crops at times because, of infestations of something or other that came through. Japanese beetles were terrible.
Right. I think it's as simple as wash your fruits and vegetables real well before you eat them. Don't get canned foods. Try to look at gluten-free. Get off of soy. Get no gluten, no soy. Stay away from sugars. These are your basics. And if you look at the food and it has it there, and you can go in any grocery store to buy it, then there's other things to get them. And that's as simple as it is. Keep it simple, sweetheart. You've heard that. KISS, right?
Yep. Well, I if my memory is correct, I remember in the mid-'80s they came out with this wonderful new set of products called trans fats.
Oh, yeah.
That they weren't going to stay in your body, and it wouldn't let your body absorb fats and whatever. And then 20 years later, we're like removing trans fats out of everything.
It's true. Yeah, it's almost like that with everything. This is the best, newest exercise program, and we've got this new, and I don't want to say it, but they introduced it, and about a month later, they realized that it was ripping everyone's knees apart. So those, but everyone has to have something new and exciting. We just get bored easily. So give me
Well,
exciting food
do
for
you have
healthy.
any opinion on all this GMO thing going on with
Change
these
the rest.
genetically
Change
modified
the rest.
things?
Thumbs down on the GMOs. Just stay away from it. And they're like, what is that? What is the GMO? If you look at what you're eating, is it canned? Could it have a GMO? Absolutely. Right? They're
Right.
genetically modifying it. So it's all processed foods. That's it.
Well, the thing that always makes me laugh, because where I am, we have well water, probably the best water you can drink anywhere. And we have a snack bar at the flea market that we run next door, so it's tested all the time. And so there's nothing in there, but it's hard water. It's got a lot of minerals. And my cousins would come and they'd always want the bottled water, and I would go, "Oh my God, the tap water we have is so much better."
I say that all the time.
And this water that's sitting in plastic bottles, I don't think people really understand that plastic is a petrochemical.
Right.
It is not an inert substance.
Right.
And as much as they'll say that it doesn't leach something,
it does.
I am really suspicious about that. Okay, things that glass doesn't leach. Glass is basically safe.
Right.
But anything that's in plastic that's stored for any length of time and heated up and cooled off and heated up and cooled off, sitting in your car or in a warehouse.
Especially here in Florida.
Oh yeah, especially in your state. Yes. I'm surprised some of the plastic doesn't melt with some of the temperatures that it probably reaches.
In my car, it does. And yeah, I do the same thing. When I go out to restaurants and whatnot, I have no problem with having regular tap water. No problem.
Right. Well, I mean, we have some water here that I don't think is a drink either. In some of the cities that, the fluoridization is one thing that I think you need to do for kids with their teeth and that. But there's a lot of that chlorine in that water that I think is basically undrinkable, to be honest with you.
Right. And then you've got there's something about the fluoridization, as you call it, but the fluoride as well. And learning from going into the functional medicine field is that fluoride actually turns your thyroid off for some period of time. There's no need for fluoride. There just isn't. We'll have to. That's another radio show.
Well, yeah. So that I've learned something new. All right. So let's go, because I've seen that you have your own techniques called sky dancing and the Skerik method. Maybe you could go into some of that for us.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I started teaching, and I wanted to know how I would bring certain things together. Artistic perception, right, which is your processing and your analyzing, and how you respond to sensory information, right? And then what I did is I took artistic perception, creative expression, because you want some when you have dancing, it's creativity. So I can teach, and I'd always say I can teach anyone a step. I can tell them step 1, 2, and it doesn't matter if they're 2 years old or 99 years old. Doesn't matter, what level they're on. I can teach anyone the step. But what they're doing is they're putting their own creativity behind that step, and that's what's going to make them dance. That's what's going to make them dancers. That's what's going to make them have joy, have passion. And that's why I call dancing fun. And so I bring that into it. I look at the historical and cultural context. Anything that's an assessment of ascribing value to that. I mean, if you look at this and you look at the method, it's got all of this in it. And I brought this all together as the method, teaching you the connection you have, the relationship to applications and different exercises, or what we call dance steps, and how they're put together, and explaining how to manage them. And then you want to go and I explain the anatomy and physiology of what the steps are doing. And I put together exercises. So you've got that's my method, basically. I put that together, and I put together a functional side of our program, because, like I said, the program that we put together for the Perfect Storm Charity has 2 different bases, a functional and a clinical side. And so when the functional side together, we talked about just your basics: wall squats, sitting, standing, balancing on one foot, hop, skip, leap, jump. What do all these do? And what you're talking about, your range of balance, where your balance is, where it's centered on one foot, exchanging foot to foot. Just those basics we take for granted every day. We take for granted walking down the street, bouncing a ball. These are things that what I found with anyone with special needs, they can't take that for granted because it doesn't get to the brain properly. So I tried to put together the method, learning the clinical background of it, using that background and putting it to the functional background, which is a physical and exercise of it, and putting together steps that would help the neurological process. Any dance steps that worked in opposition, working with their creative expression, trying to work in groups because it's very difficult for them to work in groups, working with each other, and put that together. And in my method, which will be out, you'll see how I utilize the different exercises.
Well, now, so you said with your method coming out, so are you coming public with this? You making a book? Are you? I assume it's not done in a closet, so.
But I haven't. I've been teaching classes myself for years with this, and now I'm actually I put the course together, so I'm teaching other instructors, and we're expanding to other studios. So we're expanding the course, the Perfect Storm Charities course, to at least 7 other studios within the next 6 months, I'd say. But we put this together, and at the end of January, we have a study that's going out. It's a 90-day study, and we have 40 families that we're offering this to. And so what I was saying was we're taking this exercise physical side of it and the clinical side, which encourages them to eat properly. It has the IV nutrition, and we've added the hyperbaric chamber so they can get more oxygen. And we're putting that together for 90 days. And that panel of doctors and I will work on this with these families to increase everything, their awareness, their abilities, and have a better life. So yeah, it is. When I say coming out, we're working on the studies at the end of January, actually.
So these are all combined then? They
combine. Well, the clinical side, I have GHT Institute, which is the clinic, the medical clinic here. I have Sky Dance Studios. I have a dance studio, and I started the base classes here at this office, in the studio side of my office. And both GHT Institute and Sky Dance Studios provided classes and clinical studies and whatnot for the Perfect Storm charity. So I started classes about 10 years ago, and I was working out of my own studio, out of gymnasiums and whatnot. And then when I opened GHT Institute, the Institute kind of encompassed everything with the classes I could teach and the clinical, giving the doctors were here and helping the students. And now we're supporting the charity. The charity has its 501c3. So I brought everyone together. We have a beautiful panel. When I say beautiful, an amazing panel of doctors and health nutritionists and what you said, and they came together, and we actually have our first studies at the end of January. So all 3 encompass.
It's a normal course of developing thing, I think. Start different pieces of it, and then you find that you need another piece, and you put it together. And charities, of course, have a whole different funding kind of mechanism that, is different than relying on people's families who have special needs kids. Sometimes they don't have a lot of resources either.
Right.
I mean, it's an expensive proposition for a lot of it.
Right.
So I think it's a noble thing to be doing.
It's not, some can afford it as well, but I think most families are turned off by the fact that they've been to one doctor and they've got this modality, and the other one, well, they have this modality, and this one takes care of this. And you have to send them to 12 different places to do all these different things. And what we try to do here is bring them all together and say, let's put them in one study, so they've got all things happening to actually make a difference. Because they're finding that, okay, we did this for a amount of time. Now the doctor sends you to this doctor to do something next, and you're basically a guinea pig to doctor to doctor to doctor. Well, with this study, you've got the exercise, which is crucial, the nutrition, which is crucial, the vitamin nutrition that's crucial, and the hyperbaric that we found that really helps. And you put them together, and they work on these, adding different applications, adding a vitamin one at a time, so it doesn't, exacerbate a problem for these kids or these adults that are in the study. But we found that putting them all together, I've never seen anyone do that, and that's what we're doing.
Right. Well, I'm a firm believer with when you even quote normal people is that the most important doctor you have on any kind of medical team is the internist who sees all of you.
Right.
Because once you start getting into just the specialists, they're focused on one system in your body. And so they straighten that out, but it offsets the other systems.
Right. That's exactly it. Balancing the systems, and that's where, and I think we're light years ahead of most offices. And I didn't want my own doctor, and he didn't understand what I was talking about. But that's what functional medicine does. It balances the systems.
Well, I think a lot of medications, it winds up that your you're treating the side effects of other medications.
Right. Well,
The more pills you start taking, the more side effects you have.
right.
And eventually, I think you lose you lose track of what the original symptomology was.
Right. Well, John, I would say this. I don't want to just talk and say, I believe this from another parent or whatnot, but being that, I don't know what out loud I'll say, but my son became special needs, and I did not expect that. When I started the program with special needs myself when I was in California, I had no idea that would be an affliction with my own child. And when that happened, I went to doctor after doctor after therapist after what's going on, how do we fix this? And it was one pill after the other until at one point they had him on 18 medications.
Oh my God.
Dead. And when I tell you that I basically went to a friend of mine and said, strip him of everything. Strip him of everything and let's start from scratch. How's he supposed to eat? What is he depleted of? I mean, they basically said, Mary, if you keep putting medications, he's basically going to have a heart attack. So I went through it myself at one point. And in finding these different things, I found them through trying to help my own child. I started with helping others and then was able to slightly help my own, but it's a never ending process. And when you think you've got it licked, there's something else going on. So if anyone came up and helped my son in any way, shape, or form, I can tell you I was grateful. And
of course,
that just had no idea what a parent goes through, whether they're wealthy or not.
Well, I mean, it's all an unknown to everybody, and even medicine, they always call it practice.
Right.
It's not perfection. They're guessing as much as anybody else is guessing. Even medications, a lot of times people, they'll have a bad side effect from it or a reaction to it.
Right.
And the studies will show that 90% of the time that doesn't happen. But if you're part of the 10%, it still happens to you.
Right. Well, John, that's why they call it a practice.
Right. No. And that's why you have to have people who really, aware.
Right.
And I think they've made a lot of progress with a lot of special needs kind of approaches,
right.
At least in the last, 30 years that I had seen.
Yeah.
At one point, I was involved with the governor's council on mental retardation to some degree.
Right.
And they were starting then just really coming up with different treatment programs for kids who had autism.
Right.
That, before that, they were just sitting in a corner. And then by doing special techniques and changing medications and that sort of thing, they were able to make them much more functional.
And you know what? There's such a large spectrum when you say autism.
Right.
Huge. I mean, it starts with Asperger's and goes from, low functioning to middle to high functioning. And how many are diagnosed with something that's wrong and could be autism or something else? I mean, it's just, when I say special needs, anything that has to deal with the brain, you can label it 100 different ways. You can say autism, you can say schizophrenia, but the brain's not functioning for some reason the right way. And it's not
right.
Proper nutrients, nutrition, oxygen, whatever it may need. And it's starting from your gut. So you've got to heal the gut. The gut then follows, and you heal the gut, and you can heal the brain.
Right. Well, listen, I think a lot of the labels of categories of mental illness really came more so from them discovering or stumbling upon a medication that worked
right.
on a certain population, and then that's what it became, like manic depression with lithium,
right.
And Thorazine with schizophrenia. I mean, they didn't find those things on their own. They kind of stumbled upon
them. I'm not saying that there's no good in medications. I believe you can't just strip people of their medication.
Right.
You need these medications to kind of even you out so that you can even begin this process. And if you can start with the medications to kind of get you calm, I'd say, or relaxed into knowing that, okay, now if I eat right, and I start adding all these nice healthy things for myself, maybe I can get off of one of those medications. Maybe I can reduce those medications. And so that's the idea. That's the knowledge you want to get out there.
Right. Now, I'm also interested in now when you use the hyperbaric chambers. Now, how does that all work?
Well, it's oxygen, right? So oxygen does what? Heals the cells. So it works for many different applications. You're looking at it for wound care. You're looking at it for brain function. You're looking at a bunch of, but it's oxygen, pure oxygen for you.
But it's under pressure, right?
Right.
I mean, that's why it's interesting to me because, of course, I've scuba dive. So you're always afraid you're going to end up in a hyperbaric.
Right.
chamber. But why is that different than just?
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. We lost you for a second.
I'm back. Did you miss?
Okay.
So I tried it myself, and it's not that easy. I tell you, for some people, especially for those of us who think they're in control.
Okay.
Or in mothers, because we've always got things, we want to handle things and fix things ourselves. But I got in that chamber and I thought, wow, can you just get me out of here for a minute? I have to breathe. You're locked in.
Yeah, it's claustrophobic. Yes, for sure.
But if you can, the woman that was working the machine actually got me back in there, closed my eyes, got me relaxed, and I went through it, and I had a humongous wound. I'd burned myself like you wouldn't believe, and it was not happy. And the next day, the skin came back. I mean, you couldn't even notice I had a burn.
Well, so how long does somebody go in one of these chambers that it has that, a positive effect?
Well, it takes time, and that's the thing with this, is everyone's different. You just can't put a time on it. And
okay.
So you need to know what application you're using it for. If it's wound care, it's one thing. If it's like, say, autism, you're not going to be able to go in there 1 or 2 times and everything's better. Or cancer. You're not, but if you can go in periodically, 2 times, 3 times a week, and you've got that happening for a period of time,
okay.
I've got testimonials of people that were just here this past week that said one had cancer, had the treatments, used the hyperbaric. It was the only thing that helped her. She's in remission. And so they're just, the testimonies are unbelievable.
So has there been a movement to use hyperbaric chambers, like, for treatment? This is all new to me, so
right.
I've just never imagined. I mean, it makes a lot of sense because oxygen is the primary, element
right.
that allows our body to function.
That's right. That's right. So, and what happens with the brain? It's depleted of oxygen. That happens a lot of times. Not just from every day, but from whatever they're depleted of. I mean, their vitamins and nutrients, and then their oxygen. Or the cells, wounds. I mean, of course you don't have oxygen going there. You want to rebuild the skin. You want to rebuild whatever the ailment is.
Well, that's probably part of the aging process, right? Because our lungs over time,
that's right,
aren't as efficient or effective as we get older.
That's right.
So it does make a lot of sense.
Right. Good. If it makes sense, let's try it.
Right. Well, now, do they have the where are the hyperbaric chambers other than in the hospital? Are there?
Well, I think they're coming out more and more. We have one here in our office. I know of one out in Plantation. I know one in West Palm. I don't know of many. I mean, it's not like they're at every corner store. So that's
right.
a definite positive. And I think you'll be seeing more and more of them. I just don't know. I mean, like anything, people are afraid of certain things and people are gung-ho for them. But you have to find where they work best. And that's why we're working them with, we work them into a study. We're not telling anyone that any one thing is perfect.
Oh, right. Of course. I mean, you've always got to. Well, if you want to do it scientifically, you only change one variable. But when you've got human lives, you've got to change a number of variables to make sure that there is a benefit, not just an experiment.
That's right, and I think that's why we're different. We are changing one, every week at a time. We're able to move and add instead of bombarding the client, the patient, whatever you want to call them, the student. But with everything, we just add little at a time and see what works. If it doesn't work, we can adjust it. And that's why the studies will help us.
Right.
I don't think no one's got this. So no one's doing what we're doing here. I've looked and researched, and if they are, I'd love to know. I'd like to be involved. But right now, this is something that we're really searching for because I think putting them all together and working with these families, they'll see considerable difference.
Well, and it's probably part of the problem, too, with the way the advocacy groups are all set up, because it's usually, somebody is autistic, so there's an autistic society.
Right.
Or somebody's schizophrenic, so there's a schizophrenic society.
Oh.
And then sometimes, I'm sure they're not talking among one another all the time either.
No.
And then when the government starts getting tight with budgets, then they're competing for the same dollars.
Tell me about it. That's with us as well. I mean, I've spent the last 10 years in classes and everything that's gone into these programs, and the donations have come from me. And so it's time where I'm asking for donations from others because I've added all these applications. So that's what we're working on now. And let me tell you something, it's not easy. You can't ask a friend or family member or anyone. They're worried about something or wondering about something. And even if the funniest thing is, John, I was teaching classes and I actually am giving them free classes. And I had to say, what is it that you're after? Why would you be doing something like this? And they were questioning why I was doing anything that was kind or nice or out of the goodness of my heart or that wasn't charging them and why I enjoyed it so much. They actually questioned this. So their fears have brought on a lot of the negativity that we get just to help others. And so,
in my earlier career, when I first went over to the Attorney General's office, I had a foundation that I was more or less running as staff that was an anti-crime foundation. So we had to raise money privately and that kind of thing. And it's a tough job, and it takes a certain level of skill, in learning how to do it.
Right.
And then you've got to go through funding cycles if you're doing it from private corporations, they have their own funding cycle and their own pet projects that they have interest in. And, to break what they're doing, then you've got to convince them that what you're doing is important and that sort of thing.
Right.
Although I would think the pharmaceutical companies would probably have, a fair amount of interest in what you're doing. So, only because it would make them look better.
Right. I think so.
Right. That's sometimes. Well, my theory on fundraising was that the biggest secret was to find a way so they could not say no,
right.
or that you found a way of guilting them into it.
That's the truth, the guilt. And I'm terrible with that. I'm terrible with asking, but you know what? I don't want to be as terrible because I know what we're doing is for the right cause. I know what we're doing is going to help them. So if the only way it is for me to ask, then it's a need. I need to ask. And I'm not by that at all. And so, I was very blessed to be able to do what I was doing, for everyone, for myself. But when it comes to a point where in order to do more, you need to have more. And so then I'm going to get out there and get recognized and say, this is what we're doing. It's worthy. We're worthy of this cause. And I've got an amazing group of doctors that are putting in the time, the energy, and the efforts, and they deserve for this to happen. And so they're saying, Mary, go ahead, you go do this. They're full force behind me with it. And I'm really, really proud and lucky that I have them with me because they're amazing. And am I allowed to say their names? Because I have to.
Oh, yeah, no, sure, absolutely.
We have Dr. Mario Pierre, and we have Dr. Robert Stein, and we have Doug Caparino, and those are the three that work with us right now. Another gentleman that works with us, Russell Grayson, he does a lot of our legal work, but because his background was in medical field, medical legal field, he actually knows a lot of the medicine, and he's amazing because when he works with the doctors, he understands everything they're talking about. So really fortunate. I have a COO, Michael Stewart, and he backs this program like you wouldn't believe, and he keeps everything together. So I'm really lucky that these gentlemen, and I have a couple of women that are parents, they come in together and they come in on a weekly basis and take their time, their energy, and not just during the week when they're taking time away from their own offices and their own lives, but during the week. I don't let them sleep. I get say I'm texting emails and they answer me.
Right.
That's the exciting part.
Well, I learned a long time ago that you really have to assemble teams.
Right.
That people individually can't take on any major topic or issue, because you need a variety of skill levels.
Right.
And you also need to be able to encourage one another, because some of these issues are really difficult to deal with, and they can be quite exasperating.
Right. Oh, they are. And we're lucky. We work off each other. We ask questions. There's not anyone here that has an attitude. It's their attitude of gratitude is unbelievable. So that's where we all work from. There's not an ego in the room, and I can tell you, they have a right to have an ego. And I'm amazed when I listen to them. I leave here, and it's the best therapy I ever had when I listen to them talk and collaborate. It's just I think about it every day, and I'm just, like I said, the word blessed isn't even a big enough word.
Right. So now, in terms of fundraising, what have you been doing?
We started with our first charity event This was this past week. It was the smallest event, but it was just to build knowledge. We're now filing for grants. So I got involved with the National Organization for Grant Writing, and we're working with them now. So I have an amazing grant writer who's teaching us how to actually go out and find the grants. So that's step right now. I don't really do a lot of that. That's what Michael's handling right now. And actually do these types of things and speak to people and teach classes and come to the office. But Michael's working on that. The group is called FANO.
Spano or Fano?
Nonprofits. Florida Association of Nonprofit Organizations.
Oh, okay.
So that they do an entire course. So that's what we're doing right now is we're working on getting grants and funding for our process, for our studies. But a lot of we already have different organizations that have said once your studies are finished and you can complete them and give us that information, we would love for you to ask for our grant. So right now we're
good
for the studies. And then after the studies, we can show, the results and then ask to do more so that we can do this with many, many other families.
Right. Well, I will give you my secret in terms of fundraising beyond getting them not to say no, was that generally you've got to figure it's a two cycle mission. The first time you approach a lot of these companies or their foundations is they've already got in their mind what they're funding already.
Right.
So you've got to plant the seeds for, the next cycle.
Right.
And that's usually where you succeed. So you can't be disappointed if you go through the first cycle and you don't get a lot.
We just found that. We went from organization to organization, and they said, well, we've already decided what we wanted for the year. And I said, well, would you mind if I submit this for your next season? And they said, well, you know what? We actually have something coming in February, March, or whatnot. If you submit it to me, I'll take a look at it. We'll prepare for then. So, that's exactly what happened.
Right. And at the end, I was able to write a letter and get a $25,000 check from different places. So, but it was a learning curve.
That's it.
Unless you're a professional doing it.
Right. That's it. That's what we need. We're looking at, between $25,000, $35,000 to start the studies, and we're trying to raise that now. We're attempting to raise it. We are going to raise it.
Oh, no, you will. I can tell. Of that, I have no doubt, Mary.
Oh, God. All right. Your mouth to God's ears. Here we go.
Where do you think you're going to go next? Once this study comes out, and are you going to try to franchise this across the country? Because I know that, these issues aren't just in Florida.
Right.
And,
absolutely.
That knowledge base or techniques probably needs to be expanded somehow.
It will be, and that's exactly where we're going with it. On a national.
I don't know, you kind of cut off there for a
second.
second.
Yeah, no, I said that's exactly where we're going with it. It's definitely on a national basis.
Okay, so you're going to do it like through a private kind of structure, or are you going to have like a national organization take it over, something like?
Definitely a national organization. Right now, getting it to be an educational program on the physical side is what we're working on, so that we can be a certified program, kind of like you would say your Pilates method, the Skeirik method, and definitely taking that state to state and the national basis. But definitely the entire program, yes, definitely what you said, taking it to national in an organization.
Because I know up here we used to have, I don't know if they changed their name because the term retardation has become problematic.
Right.
But they used to be the Association of Retarded Citizens, and I know that they had a national, reach across the country, and I know they still exist. But some structure like that, that's already in place. And now I don't know whether they would have the ability to do physical activities as much as like a gym or whatever. But I guess there would be some way of doing a tie-in. Or alternatively, if you could go to a gym organization and get them.
That would work with you anywhere, gyms, dance studios. They'd love to be affiliated. I don't have to sell this to them. I made a phone call to 6 studios, and all studios within 15 minutes I had a yes. Okay.
Well, that's good because sometimes people are very cautious about, a lot of times it's an educational process you have to do.
Right. No, I explained what we were doing and explained what the benefits were. Listen, it's a class a week. It's 2 hours of your space per week. This is what you're going to get from this organization. This is how the organization is going to benefit you. This is how you can benefit others. And there was never, can you come in? Can I sit down? I want to see the structure of it. exactly how this works, what instructor will be here, what the license is. I mean, they're basically worried about liability. That's it.
Right. Well, I didn't want to raise that, but
Yeah.
that's the lawyer in
That's
me.
the lawyer. All right, raise.
Is it always that, I always say that if you go to a lawyer and you ask them about what you can do, they will tell you everything you cannot do, which probably includes doing nothing, not even waking up in the morning. That's inherently dangerous and you should be insured.
Well, that's why we're going, on the physical side of it. That's why you go to gyms and dance studios. They're already teaching classes. Do you have a certified instructor? Are they CPR certified? What are their certifications? What are their teaching skills? What's their background? And for them to instruct, have they been certified in your program? So you look at those three. Do they have their own coverage? And most do. I mean, you're not even allowed to teach anywhere without the coverage, without your insurance. So
right.
That and the studio has their insurance, you're covered with any classes like you would be. So the no wouldn't be there. The idea of the clinical side, I mean, that's always a little more tricky, but that's why you have a good lawyer.
Right. Well, on the clinical side too, as well, I would assume that there are doctors who specialize in some of these kind of issues. Well, I guess even if you're dealing with really young children, right, with autism, what the pediatricians have to have special training in there, I would think.
Right. Well, we're starting with the studies. I mean, between the ages of 8 and 25, and we're not disclaiming that anyone else can't take the study. They can. They can absolutely be a part of the program no matter what the age, no matter what the level. We're starting with ages 8 to 25, and we're looking at moderate to high functioning so that we can actually see what the progression is and make it a little easier for us to get statistics.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
That was probably going to be my next question because I figured if you were using really young children, you may not be able to tell any results for 10 or 15 years.
Right. So, I know of a few families that have ages 5 to 6, and I said, listen, the classes themselves are open to everyone. You don't have to be in the study. You can take these classes in any one of our locations, and they're always free. So you come and take them. I encourage them to take them. You get them healthier, you get them stronger, feeling good. It's always going to benefit anyone. So that side of it would never be at a fee. When you look at the clinical side, then you're looking at products and whatnot. And so either you're in the study or you can come in and we can do what we can on an income contingent basis and try to help as much as we can.
Right. That makes a lot of sense as well.
Right. That's what we can do. That's what I can do. Listen, the more I can do, the more I will do.
No, I can tell that. So now, do you have plans to train like a certain kind of certification for these, fitness experts and that sort of thing in the different gyms?
I do. I actually have this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, I have my certification course, and I've got a bunch of instructors coming to take my course. They'd be certified in my method after the course. That's also why we're looking to get the method certifiable with an educational program so that you can look at it, and it is a recognized certification course. Right now, I can certify them myself, but I'd like it to be nationally recognized. So it's all a process, but yes, they actually have to take the course and teach classes with me prior to teaching on their own, because it's not, you can teach anyone the steps. You can teach anyone, okay, this is a bicep curl, or this is a step, but how do they teach? Not all, dancers are instructors. And so you can teach them, but how are they going to teach these kids? Because you've got to be able to know what to do every 2 to 3 minutes. You have to be able to adjust and change quickly. And you also have to be able to do that while 5 other kids are doing something completely different in a room, because they're not all going to go with flow.
Right. Well, Mary, we're almost out of time. So what I'd like you to do, would you give us your websites where people would be able to contact you?
Absolutely. So we have the Institute, which is ghpinstitute.com. And then the other, and T meaning G is in global, H is in health, and T is in training. So it's ghtinstitute.com. The other is Perfect Storm Charities, it's IES, perfectstormcharities.org. You can go to either one of those sites. If you go to Skydance Studios, it's going to send you to Perfect Storm Charities. And if you ever need to call, our number is 561-948-1948. And I will return the call.
Wonderful, Mary. So I want to say thanks to OurTruth.com for broadcasting the show. You can find more information about me and my book series, The Archangel Jeremiel and the War to Conquer Heaven, at www.john-j-higgins.com. And the website for this radio show is www.hangingwithhiggins.com. And with that, I wish you all a good night.
Thank you, John. Thank you so much.
Okay.